Welcome back to Tales by RM, where we bring you old stories and new voices. Today we are diving deep into a story about ambition, the dangerous allure of shortcuts, and the heavy price of impatience. It is the story of a young woman named Nneka. Now Nneka wasn't just any hairstylist. She was an artist. If you sat in her chair, you weren't just getting braids or a weave, you were getting a transformation. Her fingers moved with a speed and precision that made people stop and stare. But Nneka had a problem that many of us face. She had the talent, but she didn't have the patience. She looked around at the big, fancy salons in the city with their glass doors and air conditioning, and then she looked at her own situation, working out of a cramped corner, and she felt invisible. She felt like her talent was rotting away in the shadows. One afternoon, while she was sitting on her porch, staring blankly at the street, her neighbor, an older man who had seen the world, sat down beside her. He saw the heaviness in her eyes. He told her something simple, something that should have been comforting. He said, "Nneka, if you believe in your hands, start small. Nobody starts at the top of the mountain. You have to climb." That advice lit a fire in her belly, but it was a fire mixed with desperation. She didn't just want to climb. She wanted to fly. So she did it. She scraped together every last coin she had, ignored the fear gnawing at her gut, and rented a small, humble space. It wasn't the glass-walled palace she had dreamed of. The paint was peeling slightly in the corners and the air conditioning was just a rusty fan that rattled against the ceiling. But it was hers. She spent days scrubbing the floors, arranging her combs by size, and polishing the mirror until she could see the hope in her own reflection. She was ready. She thought the hardest part was over. She thought that simply opening the doors meant the world would come rushing in to see her talent. But here is the cold, hard truth about business that Nneka wasn't ready for. Just because you build it, doesn't mean they will come. Not immediately. And certainly not in the numbers she needed to survive. Days turned into weeks, and the silence in that shop became deafening. Nneka would sit in her chair, spinning slowly, watching potential customers walk right past her window. She saw them heading down the street to the busy, loud salons where the stylists gossiped and the music blared. It was agonizing. She knew she was better than them. She knew her parts were cleaner, her grip was gentler, and her styles were more creative. But talent doesn't scream, it whispers. And in a noisy world, Nneka felt like she was whispering into a hurricane. The rent was coming due, and her pockets were empty. The advice to start small began to taste bitter in her mouth. She started to wonder if the old man was wrong. Maybe starting small was just a trap to keep people like her at the bottom. The desperation began to curdle into resentment, and she wasn't just hungry for money anymore. She was starving for recognition. And we all know that when you are that hungry, you become willing to eat anything, even poison. It was on a Tuesday, a slow, dragging Tuesday, that Nneka decided she couldn't take the silence anymore. She locked her empty shop and walked down the street to one of the popular spots. She told herself she was just going to buy some supplies, maybe check the prices, but really, she was looking for a secret. She wanted to know what magic spell they were casting to keep their chairs full while hers gathered dust. She slipped into the waiting area of a crowded salon, pretending to check her phone, but her ears were tuned like radar dishes. The air was thick with the smell of burnt hair and acetone. Two stylists were working near her, laughing loud and fast. Nneka listened. She expected to hear them talking about new techniques or premium products. But that's not what she heard. One of them, a woman with bright red nails, leaned in and whispered, "Girl, if you braid it too tight and too perfect, they won't come back for 2 months. You have to give them a reason to return." The other stylist laughed, a sharp, cynical sound. "Exactly," she replied. "Make it look good for the photo, but if it lasts too long, we starve. Business is about returns, not durability." Nneka sat there frozen. It was like a lightning bolt hit her. She realized she had been playing the game all wrong. She was trying to give people perfection, hair that lasted, styles that protected their scalp. But these women, they were manufacturing need. They were ensuring the customer had to come back. And then, a darker thought crept into Nneka's mind, twisting the conversation she just heard into something far more dangerous. She remembered a bottle of extra-strength chemical relaxer sitting on her shelf back at the shop. She thought, what if I didn't just make it loose? What if I made them uncomfortable? Asterisk if she applied just a little of that harsh chemical mixed in with a soothing hair cream. It would itch. It would burn just enough to be annoying after a week or two, but not enough to cause immediate alarm in the chair. They wouldn't be able to keep the braids in. They would have to take the hair out sooner. They would have to come back to her for a wash, for a soothing treatment, for a redo. It was a wicked thought. Terrible thought. But in that moment, standing in the middle of that busy, noisy salon with the scent of money in the air, Nneka didn't see it as evil. She saw it as a strategy. She saw it as her way out. She didn't wait long to test her new theory. The very next morning, a young university student walked in, clutching a picture from a magazine. She wanted braids long, neat, and painless. Under normal circumstances, Nneka would have been thrilled just to have a head to work on. But today, her hands were shaking with a different kind of energy. She went into the back room, ostensibly to grab a fresh tub of hair cream. There, in the dim light, she opened the jar of heavy-duty relaxer, the kind that smells sharp enough to burn your nose hairs if you get too close. She took a scoop, just a small dollop, and mixed it into the soothing minty hair food she used to grease the scalp. She stirred it until the mixture looked innocent, creamy, and white. When she returned to the chair, she was the picture of professionalism. As she parted the girl's hair and applied the tainted mixture to the roots, the student smiled and said, "Wow, that feels cool and tingly. You really have a gentle touch." Nneka smiled back, but her heart was hammering against her ribs. "It's a special treatment," she lied, her voice smooth as silk. "It helps the hair grow." She finished the braids and they looked magnificent. The girl paid, tipped her generously, and left swinging her new hair, completely unaware that she was walking away with a ticking time bomb on her scalp. Nneka locked the door, held the cash in her hand and waited. She wasn't just waiting for the next day. She was waiting to see if the poison she planted would bear the fruit of greed. 2 weeks. That is usually how long a fresh set of braids stays looking crisp, often lasting much longer if taken care of. But for that poor university student, it was barely 10 days before she was back at Nneka's door. She wasn't swinging her hair this time. She was distressed, her fingers constantly digging into her scalp, scratching as if she were fighting off a swarm of ants. "Nneka," she pleaded, "I don't know what happened. My head is on fire. It itches so bad I can't sleep." Nneka put on her best mask of concern. She ushered the girl into the chair, tooting sympathetically. "Oh, my dear," Nneka said, examining the irritated red skin she was responsible for. "It must be the humidity. Or maybe you have very sensitive skin. We need to take these out immediately, and do a deep treatment before you hurt yourself." The girl was so grateful she nearly cried. She thanked Nneka for being so understanding, for prioritizing her health over the hairstyle. Nneka spent the next hour undoing her own work, washing the chemical residue away with cool water and expensive conditioner. As the water ran clear, the girl sighed in relief. The burning stopped. And then came the moment that sealed Nneka's fate. The girl stood up, opened her purse, and paid for the takedown, the wash, and the deep treatment. She paid full price. She didn't blame Nneka. She blamed her own skin. She looked at Nneka as a savior who had fixed the problem, not the villain who caused it. As Nneka closed the register that evening, the cash felt heavier than usual. The narrator in our story reminds us of a dangerous truth here. Money always feels sweeter when it comes easily. It's an addiction. When you work hard, you value the coin. When you cheat and get paid double, you start to think you're a genius. Nneka looked at that money and didn't see betrayal. She saw a business model. The floodgates didn't just open. Nneka kicked them down. Armed with her secret formula, she stopped looking at clients as people and started seeing them as recurring revenue streams. It wasn't just the student anymore. It was the market woman who needed her hair done for a wedding, the banker who needed to look professional for a meeting, even the young mother who just wanted something low maintenance. Nneka mixed the poison for all of them. Her shop, once a tomb of silence, became a beehive of activity. Her phone, which had sat on the counter like a paperweight, was now buzzing constantly with notifications. "Nneka, can you squeeze me in? Nneka, my scalp is acting up again. I need your magic touch." She was booked solid for weeks. From the outside, she looked like the ultimate success story. People whispered her name in the streets, calling her the scalp doctor, because she was the only one who could soothe the itch, never realizing she was the one lighting the fire. She bought new curtains, a better chair, a stronger fan. She walked with a swagger that hadn't been there before. But deep down, buried under the layers of cash and newfound arrogance, a tiny voice was screaming. Every time she saw a woman grimace while scratching her head in the waiting area, Nneka had to look away. She told herself she was just being smart, that this was how the big dogs played. But she wasn't building a business. She was building a house of cards on a foundation of lies, and the wind was picking up. Then came the Friday that changed everything. The bell above the door chimed, not for a student or a neighbor, but for a woman in a crisp blue police uniform. She was tall, commanding, and looked exhausted from a long shift. She sat in Nneka's chair and sighed. Just give me something simple. I don't have time to fuss with my hair for a few weeks. Nneka felt a cold prick of fear at the base of her neck. This was authority. This was the law sitting in her salon. A smart person would have stopped right there. A smart person would have used the clean bottle, done an honest job, and sent the officer on her way. But greed is a powerful blinder. It makes you reckless. It whispered in Nneka's ear. She's just another customer. She won't know. Nneka looked at the officer, then at the jar of tainted cream. Her arrogance had grown too big for the room. With a steady hand, too steady, she mixed the relaxer. She applied the burning lye to the officer's scalp, smiling and chatting about the weather, completely ignoring the fact that she was effectively assaulting a member of the police force. The officer left looking sharp, but unlike the others, she was trained to notice when things didn't add up. She was trained to investigate pain, not just accept it. It didn't take 2 weeks for the law to come knocking back. It took exactly 3 days. When the door opened that afternoon, the sun was blocked out by the silhouette of the officer, and the air in the shop instantly turned ice cold. She wasn't scratching her head in confusion like the others. She was holding her cap in her hand, her eyes blazing with a mix of pain and fury. She walked straight past the waiting chairs, marching right up to Nneka's station. "I've been on the force for 10 years, the officer said, her voice dangerously quiet. "I know the difference between a dry scalp and a chemical burn." Nneka tried to stammer, tried to offer the usual excuses about sensitive skin and humidity, but the officer wasn't listening. She reached over the counter, pushing past Nneka's trembling hands, and grabbed the jar of special mixture sitting by the mirror. She unscrewed the lid and took a single sniff. The sharp, acrid sting of the relaxer gave it away instantly. There was no hiding it, no spinning it. The officer looked at Nneka with a look of pure disgust. Not just as a cop looking at a criminal, but as a woman looking at someone who had betrayed a sacred trust. "You think you're smart?" the officer asked, holding the jar up like a weapon. "You think poisoning people to make a quick buck is business? This isn't entrepreneurship, little girl. This is assault." The shop, usually buzzing with a low hum of gossip and laughter, went deathly silent. Every eye was on Nneka. The shame was hot, burning her face hotter than any chemical could ever burn a scalp. The officer didn't handcuff her right there, though she certainly had the right to. Instead, she delivered a sentence that felt heavier than jail time. She delivered the naked truth in front of everyone. "There are no shortcuts to any place worth going," the officer said, her voice ringing off the tiled walls. "You thought you were being clever. You thought you were building a business. But all you were doing was digging a trap. You traded your integrity for a few extra coins today, and now you have to pay for it with your future." She slammed the jar down on the counter with a finality that made Nneka jump. "Close this place," she commanded. "Fix your heart before you ever try to fix anyone else's head again." And just like that, the illusion shattered. Nneka stood paralyzed as the officer turned and walked out. Then, slowly, painfully, she watched her customers, the women sitting on the waiting bench, the ones who had praised her magic hands, stand up. They gathered their bags, shook their heads in disbelief, and walked out the door. They didn't say a word. They didn't have to. The trust was broken, and once trust is broken, it is like a shattered mirror. You can try to glue it back together, but the reflection will always be distorted. Nneka didn't open the shop the next day, or the day after. Instead, with her pride in tatters and her spirit bruised, she went to find the only person whose opinion she still feared, Auntie Rita. Rita was the matriarch of the neighborhood, the woman who had originally told her to respect her craft. Nneka found her sitting on her veranda, peeling oranges with a small knife. When Nneka poured out the whole shameful story, confessing how she had twisted the advice about repeat customers, she expected Rita to yell. She expected to be chased away. But Rita just stopped peeling the orange and looked at Nneka with a deep, sorrowful pity. "Child," Rita said softly, "you listened but you didn't hear. When we say you need repeat customers, we mean you build a relationship so strong, so honest, that they wouldn't dream of going anywhere else. You don't chain them to your chair with tricks. You anchor them with trust." She leaned forward, her eyes piercing through Nneka's tears. "You have a gift, Nneka. Your hands are blessed. But talent without patience? That is just poison. You tried to harvest the fruit before you even planted the seed. And now look at your garden, it's barren." Nneka went home that night and looked at her hands, the same hands that could weave beauty, yet had been used to sow pain. She realized that the trap of easy money had almost cost her everything, not just her business but her soul. The road back wasn't easy. In fact, it was 10 times harder than when she first started. She couldn't keep the shop open under the dark cloud of her reputation. She had to close down, pack up her few honest tools and go back to the beginning. She started doing hair on her front porch again just like before. But this time there were no tricks. There were no hidden chemicals. When a client sat in her chair, Nneka explained exactly what she was doing. She focused on the health of their hair, even if it meant they wouldn't need to come back for 3 months. The money was slow. Painfully slow. There were days she wanted to scream. Days the devil whispered in her ear to find another shortcut. But she remembered the officer's eyes. She remembered Auntie Rita's disappointment. And she stayed the course. Slowly, the whispers in the neighborhood changed. They stopped calling her the scalp doctor who fixed problems, and started calling her the honest hand. It took years to rebuild what she broke in a month, but she learned the most valuable lesson of all. Peace of mind is the most expensive luxury in the world, and you can only afford it with honesty. So friends, let Nneka's story sit with you the next time you feel the itch to take a shortcut. We live in a world that worships speed. We are constantly told to get the money now, get the fame now, get the success yesterday. But remember, a castle built on sand will wash away with the first tide, no matter how beautiful it looks. True success, the kind that lets you sleep soundly at night, is built brick by brick with a mortar of integrity. Protect your name. It is the only currency that works in every market. Do good work even when no one is watching. Be patient with your blessings, and let them grow naturally. Thank you for walking this journey of redemption with us. If this story touched something in you, or if you've ever faced the temptation of the easy way, let us know in the comments below. We are building a community here, brick by brick, and we want you to be a part of it. This has been Tales by RM, where we bring you old stories and new voices. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you never miss a lesson. Until next time, keep your hands busy and your heart clean.